Welcome to النفس podcast with me Naba Al-Madani.
And Mira Al-Alwan. And today we have a special guest, Hawra Al-Milani. Hawra Al-Milani has been working in tech. I think is the best way to explain her. Not only has she been working in tech, she's concentrated in females, women in tech, but she's gone through multiple layers of working with Google, with Meta, and then finding out that she's got ADHD, and then also being made redundant. So all of the challenges that she's gone through, and now she's also doing some phenomenal stuff. So welcome, Hawra.
Welcome, Hawra.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Welcome, Hawra.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Interesting time.
Yes.
A lot going on.
Yeah, understatement. A lot is an understatement.
So you're starting your own podcast right now, and you've done so many wonderful things. So let's wind back the time maybe, and should we start going through the schooling bit, or should we start with what you're doing now? Where do we want to go?
Let's see what you're doing now.
What am I doing?
What
There's
are you
always
doing
something
now?
new. There's always something new kicking up. Right now, well, tomorrow I'll be traveling to Baghdad, inshallah. I'm working with a team there who have started the first medical podcast in Arabic, based in Iraq.
Phenomenal.
And we are interviewing all the best doctors in Iraq in different areas of medicine to really understand the healthcare system, what's happening, what are their challenges, what are the resources that they need, how are they navigating this whole system without having an actual ecosystem like we do here in the UK. You know, we have the NHS.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the basis of the healthcare system in the UK. You don't have that in Iraq. And so now we're exploring this to really understand what it takes to create this ecosystem, all the people involved, all the stories they tell. For a country that's been through so many wars, of course, the healthcare system is going to be at the forefront of it all. So it's been really exciting to hear these stories and, get a glimpse into the country which we call home, but which we only kind of really got introduced to in the last couple of decades. Wow, I sound old.
But that must be phenomenal. That must be so exciting right now for you.
It really is. It's both exciting and quite challenging as well, because I'm a mother, right? And so when I'm traveling, I'm having to leave the kids behind because of their routines and because of their life. So there are, with every exciting project, there's always a couple challenges that you have to navigate.
Of course,
So
but
alhamdulillah.
but not only is it the challenges of the children, but you're also doing your masters as well.
I am. I forgot about that for a second. I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm doing a master's in information security, which is also known as cybersecurity, but some universities are a little bit kind of...
call it information.
Yeah, they call it information security because what is cyber? And let's not go down that route. But yeah, essentially information security because we're looking at how we protect our data and what data privacy looks like. And so I like to use whatever I learn to bring it back to our own community because we're always underrepresented in these areas
100%.
and underserved as well. So I'm trying to learn whatever I can in that space to really contribute to our community, both here in the UK and in Iraq. So inshallah, exciting projects and dissertations to come up from that.
Wow.
Thank you.
And so I'm assuming this is different to what you've done undergrad.
Similar, but it's more narrow. So undergrad, I did computer science. It was very software engineering focused, coding. And then I did a master's in computing education. So that was quite, again, moving away from the technical aspects and really exploring the lack of women in tech in the UK and different countries. And then I realized I actually want to go back into being a little bit more technical and narrow because I was just widening out. And that's that's kind of been a concept in my life where I just go explore different areas and come back.
Women in tech is a big part of what you're doing as well.
Yeah, it's my favorite topic.
You are a true champion for women in tech. I've seen you go to the engineering, what was that? I think I saw you and Mohammed go
Royal
to
Academy for Engineering, yeah.
And you were talking about women in tech, and then you started up your own, I'm trying to find the words. I'm lost for words today. your own group of women in tech in Iraq as well.
Yeah, that's been a thing because I found, with my travels to Iraq, I found a group of amazing women who were getting their degrees in computer science and then not really implementing their learnings or not finding opportunities to work in the space. And then the rest of the world, our countries in the UK and the US, were really trying to advocate for women in tech. So I kind of started attending these events with Google and big tech companies to understand how we can bring them and build the bridge between the women in tech in Iraq and big tech in the rest of the world. So a lot of good has come from that, alhamdulillah.
You created an ecosystem for, is it Google?
Yeah, so Google have this arm of community called Google Developer Groups, and that's their community side where people work with them to build communities in their own cities, in their own countries. So they utilize your knowledge of the area and the region and their expertise in tech and kind of bring these tech opportunities to the rest of the world or to your communities. So managed to, back in 2017, end of 2017, 2018, built the Google Developer Group in Najaf in Iraq with these brilliant women who had their computer science degrees and were looking for opportunities. They had so much passion, so much knowledge. They just needed it to, they needed opportunity. So alhamdulillah, I was put in a position where I could bring these opportunities from San Francisco to Najaf, and they managed to grow it beautifully. And then each of these brilliant women, not only built a community for herself of women in tech, but also built their own businesses as well. So 6 years down the line, they've all built their own, whether it's a training company, tech training company, or their own software companies, working from home whilst being wives and mothers and many other things. They're building their own software companies and then also using their profiles and their social media to inspire other women, because I've always got my favorite saying that I picked up from somewhere: if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so these other women are now going like, okay, well, these women are from the same community that I grew up in. They've utilized the opportunities that they've gotten to build something for themselves, so maybe I can too. So that's part of the work.
Well, I mean, congratulations. That's
thank you. It's their hard work. It's
but to themselves. Create that and use your contacts. I mean, how did you contact Google, or how did you find out about this? Because that must have been an interesting challenge itself.
That's actually a brilliant question. How did I come across it? Whilst I was doing my undergrad, and I bet you asked, my undergrad in computer science back in 2013, I was the only woman in the lecture halls between like 100 and something guys. And I always say, I used to look behind, I always teacher's pet, sat in front. I'll tell you why I was so eager about my learning. We'll get to it in a moment. But I'd look back and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm the only woman. Do I belong here? Should I not be in this course? Like, am I in the wrong place? And I'd have these conversations with myself and be like, but I'm enjoying this. Like, tech is what I enjoy. Computer science is what I enjoy. I'm really passionate about this field. Why should I feel like I'm the odd one out just because, I'm the only woman? And so I randomly sat there one day. I'm like, I can't be the only person thinking about this. Like, I'm sure other women are going through the same thing. So I just start searching women in tech. What have big organizations done? And Google came up as the first in the Google search. And they had their program called the Women Tech Makers. It's the Women Tech Makers Ambassadors, which is another community that they were working on at the time. And I started reaching out, attending their events, traveling to Europe to attend their events and just meeting that community. And I started telling them, listen, by the way, I know you're advocating for women here in Europe and the UK and the US, but there are a group of women who I have access to that you don't know about. And they were like, okay, tell us their stories. So I started telling their stories. They started inviting me to speak in their events, and I started telling the stories of these women. And that's how I kind of really got to know them and became part of their community.
The art of networking.
So the art of networking. The art of networking, absolutely.
That means
it's powerful.
Yeah, but that must have been a fascinating experience. Just networking with those big giants of Google.
It was, especially because networking was like the scariest thing for me for many, many years. The moment I'd get really excited about attending events, university events, and then they'd be like, it's networking time. I would up and leave within seconds. And then I came up with this idea that I can't be the only one who's scared of networking. There have to be others. I always think like, I can't be the only one, please. Like, I can't be the only one. And I just kept researching, trying to find ways of building connections without actually having to talk to people and network. And I realized that's not going to work. Yeah, you can go on LinkedIn and you can reach out to people and there's all these social media, but it's so different when you have in-person interaction.
That's true.
And so I kind of tried to flip that around and go, you can't be scared of this forever. Like, you have to somehow accept and embrace this fear and just go and do it. Like, just go and talk to people. They are humans and you are humans. And so, yeah, when you say, when we say it out loud and it's like, oh, you bridge the connections, it was never easy. It was never easy. Talking to people was a big, big, big fear of mine. Again, networking was a very scary thing. So, yeah, it's fascinating to see what happens when you accept or embrace your fears.
Amazing. So did you always know, like as a child, did you always know that I want to be in tech?
No, I thought I wanted to be a photographer.
Interesting.
But in our community, and I always heard that phrase, it's not suitable for a woman to be holding a camera. That's not a job. I heard that many times as a child. It's not a job.
In what sense it's not suitable? As in to photograph weddings or what? As in, or a videographer?
Firstly, it wasn't a job. The arts were not a thing. How are you going to sustain yourself? Photography, who's going to buy your photos?
Okay.
Art, I can't draw a stick man. I always say that I'm not an artist. But
it's the traditional. You're not a doctor. You're not a
it wasn't a traditional route.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? In addition to that, coming from a conservative background as well, conservative family, there are very limited roles. Aslan, let's just get really deep and raw here. There was no talk of you working as a woman, as an adult. Yeah, go and study. That's fine, but that's as far as we're going to talk about. You're going to study. And you're going to get married and you're going to be a good wife and a good mom, and that's how you're going to be successful. It was never about working and going out. No, it's, there are rules. So photography, that's not an area you're going to go into. So I kind of let go of that passion as years went by. But at the same time, yeah, I was probably around 9, 10 when I started exploring my love for computers in a bit of a crazy way. So my brothers were working in software engineering then, and they brought the first computer home, and I went crazy over it. So they left the room. They were like working on it. I'm like, I want to be part of that. And it's like, yeah, no, like this is big people's work. What are you doing? Go do your homework. After they left the room, I started exploring the computer and pressing buttons. And anytime I'd go to a friend's house where they had a computer, I was all over it. So, yeah. It started quite young. I didn't know that I loved computers.
Wow. Your kids must love you.
Are we going down that route? Are we going
down? It must be so much fun though for kids, especially in this day and age where computer and technology in general is really big now for them. So you must be the cool mom.
I don't know. Well, you've got to ask Mimi about that. But I've been told I'm the cool aunt. My nieces and nephews like me. So yeah, alhamdulillah. I like that name. Cool. Yeah.
So can we talk a bit more about your childhood? Were you born here?
I was born in London, yeah. I'm the youngest of my siblings and the first to be born, well, the only one to be born in London. I was born a couple years after my parents moved to the UK. And yeah, what can I say about a child? You've got parents who've lived in so many different countries and brought different experiences, and you feel like, what do you feel like?
Part of their traumas or their fears that they portray onto you.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid that you might fit in too well, or they just don't know how to feel. So they're exploring with you, if that makes sense.
That's very true. That's very true. In retrospect, when you look at it, they are exploring with you at the same time. So they have all these worries. I think when you said that, Radha, I remember one main theme was make sure you're doing well, make sure you're sticking to the rules. Don't do anything that goes against school rules or the legal system or anything. Just stick by the rules. So that was a very big theme.
But I mean, for our parents, because they were so afraid of the regime or the police or the system that they just didn't want to stand out.
Yeah.
You know,
Don't question anything.
Don't question anything. Just this. If you're told this, that's it. Go with what you're told. That they're right. Even though in your head, because we were growing up and we were trying to fit in our own ways, and it's like, but I know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. For example, the government or the police or how that person's acting or what's happening now, that's wrong. Why should I say it's right? Why should I believe that it's okay?
Yeah.
And it's like we want to fight against the norm, but we're told socially, community, parentsly, because they're afraid of going against the norm, that no, you have no say in this because you're young.
Yeah, so you have that internal struggle.
You do?
Yeah.
So that must have been a challenging time, especially being the youngest of your siblings.
It was. And, you know, I went both to a private Islamic school and a mainstream school. So I kind of lived both of them, the acceptance and, you know, this is how we follow, you know, faith school and all of that. We have rules, we follow them. And then at the same time in a mainstream school where your hijab is questioned and why are you wearing it? And then you have to actually understand and really explore your own background and reasons behind wearing it. And do I want to explain myself? Should I explain myself? Is it helpful if I explain myself? And the constant judgment and trying to fit in whilst also going, but this is me as well, really. It's a lot to put on a child to really try and stand up for themselves and say, this is who I am. You already go through enough struggles and bullying and all the issues that come up in as a child who's already, you know, integrated within community, let alone have an additional aspect that you have to.
You're trying to find out your,
Identity.
You know, pardon the pun, and nafs, you know, who you are.
Yourself.
So what was the transition like from an Islamic private school to a mainstream school?
Yeah, I think the response to that is I went back to the Islamic school in the last 2 years because it was a bit too much. It was quite difficult. A lot of tears, a lot of bullying. Yeah, bullying was a big theme. Trying to really understand who you are and explain yourself all the time. It wasn't comfortable. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. It was too out of my comfort zone. So yeah, spent about 3 years in public school. Year 7 to year 9, and then went back to faith school for my GCSEs. And it just felt like, okay, I'm in my comfort zone again. But having been aware, like the difference between me and the rest of the girls at the time in my class was that I was aware of like what's happening in the outside world. So it was a really good experience to really explore all these different cultures and backgrounds that people come from and how different they are to you. You explore, and there was like a level of acceptance and understanding of other people, whilst at the same time really appreciating that I don't need to sit there explaining anything about my prayer and my hijab and my identity and my background and my family. So
do you think it helped you identify who you are? That 3-year period?
In some sense, yeah. It made me realize how strongly I feel about, for example, the topic of bullying, how strongly I feel about it. And I say this now, like I didn't realize at the time.
Yeah.
It was just something that I had, I was worried about all the time, where I'd exchange notes with my sister, like how can I respond back when they say this to me? That was all I used to worry about. But then fast forward 2019, when I'm applying to do a PhD and they're asking me for a proposal in, PhD in cybersecurity, and they're asking me for a proposal about how I'd want to go about it, about the research. And the main theme was cyberbullying. And it's like, hold on, let's like explore there are so many areas in cyber that I could be looking at that are interesting, data privacy and so much. Why is this theme of cyberbullying really getting me motivated and interested? Why do I want to solve this problem? And then I slowly found myself looking at cyberbullying in schools. And that's when I really started understanding and talking about, oh, okay, so there's a whole like background.
Your own traumas.
My own traumas that are coming out now. And That's why now today I'm like, okay, we're talking about public school and identity, and I bring a topic like that because it's important. It forms your identity. It's got such a big effect, I guess, on your sense of self.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did it help you fit in when you got to university?
It did, yeah. That's a good way of looking at it as well. Because I'm so used to having different, people from different backgrounds around me. I didn't find it difficult to integrate. So, yeah.
And so from the faith school, you went and did your A-levels where?
That's where it gets interesting. Very traditional in one sense and non-traditional in another sense.
Okay.
Traditional in the sense that I went to the Iraqi way of getting married, actually. So I got married when I was 16. I moved to Iraq, actually, because that's where my husband was. And the non-traditional way in terms of it's not something that was quite common here. Yeah. So I moved to Iraq for a good few years. And that was a whole other story because we're talking 2005, so 2 years after the whole 2003 situation. Civil war, lack of stability, abduction, all sorts of traumas that Iraq was going through. And that's when I was like, oh, I thought I was Iraqi, but I don't really know if I fit in here. Like, I don't know if I belong. And then I started using this phrase. I'd walk around and laugh about it. I don't know why. Probably using humor as a way to cover up for trauma. I used to say, La makan la watan. Like, I don't have a place and I don't have a home because, in the UK, am I British or am I Iraqi? Here, am I British or am I Iraqi? Because my accent is not fitting in. I've always got questions. Like, they're like, oh, where are you from? I'm just like, hey, I'm Iraqi. What do you mean, where are you from? Yeah, best lehejdit, your accent is not Iraqi. And I'm like, oh my God, who am I? Where do I come from? And at the time, by the way, you couldn't say I'm from the UK because of the situation. Yeah. You don't know what's going to happen to you. And so you have to kind of minimize yourself and you have to create this new persona and new way of showing up.
But that must have had a massive impact on you
at
that age because you're still a teenager. You're still growing at that time.
Yeah.
And you're thrown in the deep end like this. So did you have support? Did you have anyone that was helping you fit in? Or
you're forced to fit in.
You're forced to fit in.
Forced to fit in. They're going to make sure that you fit in.
Okay.
The Iraqi community's really come far in the last 20 years in terms of understanding other people's backgrounds and accepting, and then they started being open to the rest of the world and the internet. When I was there was no internet in the homes. There was no access to the rest of my family here. So you'd send text messages to be in touch with family. And the text messages either got there or didn't. And then So there was no infrastructure at the time. Let's get raw. It was quite a lonely time. You're starting the beginning of a life of marriage and unity, but also you're having to do it completely alone, away from family, away from support. So I grew up quite quick, actually. Like, there was a lot of responsibility to deal with. I'm very grateful for everything. Alhamdulillah, it taught me a lot.
You overcame those challenges. When did you decide to go back into studying?
Oh, yeah, that's very connected, actually. That's literally what happened. So at the time, I was like, okay, I'm in a country where I'm trying to get a job or I'm trying to study. And they're like, yeah, you don't have a degree. No, it was, you're married is a whole other thing. Does your husband give you permission to be doing this and leaving the home? Because I was in Najaf, very conservative society. We're talking very, the matter of security and safety was a big thing. It was one of the cities that was actually quite secure compared to the rest of Iraq. Baghdad, for example, the capital was not a place you'd go to. My visits there were very limited in the time, like probably 1 or 2 times. There was a lot of killing. There was a lot of strife. At the time, okay, so nobody's giving you a job because you don't have a degree. Like, the degree was everything to them.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, so is my worth now connected to a degree? At the time, I was like, okay, what skills do I have that I can help with, what I can serve with? And it was, funny enough, IT, fixing computers. I was obsessed with fixing hardware. And there weren't many places you can go to fix a computer. There were like 1 or 2 computer shops, and only men could enter those. You wouldn't dare enter them as a woman. It's not something you do.
The internet cafe sort of scenario.
Yeah, there was like 1 or 2. And so when I'd want to send emails to family or friends, I would go in with my husband and everyone would just be like looking. And they'd look at him and be like, how are you allowing her to come in here? So he had to then learn advocacy for like women in tech advocacy from a very, very early age, very early stage in his life.
How does she know how to use that computer?
Yeah, and it was, we'd go in and I'd be the one like typing and he's just sitting there because he's there to support me, not because he needs to do anything. And they're just like staring. He's like, are you done? Are you done, Hawra? I'm like, I'm doing my emails. Are you done? Why are you rushing me? Because every single person here is like going to come and, have a chat with me about, what are you doing? Why are you bringing a woman here? It's a men's space. So I'm like, okay, well, we need to change this. So I started working with women around me to help them fix their computers and teach them how to fix a computer. We messed up a lot of computers, but there was no YouTube to learn. The only way to learn was to break things.
That's how you learn. That's how lessons are learned in anything that you do.
Yeah.
If you don't fix it, if you don't break it, you can't fix it.
Yeah. And so it was just exploring through there. And that's when the theme came up of, hold on, there has to be a solution. Are we always going, is every woman, again, that theme of, am I the only one? Like, am I the only one in this city or in this country who thinks there has to be a solution for women who want to either work from home or work in a field that they enjoy but not have access to? And so that's when I started thinking there has to be a solution. Sorry, access to in terms of not having a degree. And that's when I started thinking, okay, there has to be a solution. There has to be a solution. I couldn't think of the solution then. It's only, again, like you connect the dots backwards. When I came to the UK, and then I was like, okay, well, I don't have a solution. I'm going to have to move back to the UK to find the solution and to get my degree. By the way, we missed a little part here. When 2008, I actually moved here. So I spent 3 years in Iraq.
Okay.
Moved to the UK, had our daughter, Maryam, who's 15 now, 16, yeah. And stayed here for a year and then went back to Iraq. Again, spent a few years there, and then I came back to do my degree. So back in 2000, so now we're talking about 2013, 25 then, I come to do my degree. I'm like, that's it. There is absolutely no solution here.
How did you get into university without A-levels, or you had A-levels?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. I did not have A-levels. Those 3 years when I had Maryam and I was in Iraq and I was working there, again, with women in tech. I came to the UK and I said, I was doing my A-levels distance learning remotely. Okay. So I would register with a private college here. So thank God for that. That's that provision. And this is one thing the UK has done so beautifully, the education system. So, okay, at any point you will have a way to get back into the education system. That is something that I wished Iraq had. Yeah. You either go through the formal education system or nothing. Like when I took my GCSEs and went to all sorts of places to kind of get it verified, and they're like, yeah, okay, 2 more years of school, Khamis and Sadis, that's 5th and 6th. And then you go to university here, and then it's like 6 years to prove that I can do what I'm doing right now. Yeah. And so the UK did that beautifully. So I did my A-levels remotely. So I'd get the textbook, register here, get the textbooks, go study while working in Iraq.
Obviously, there was no distant learning. There was no Zoom.
There was nothing. There were the books, and you sat there and you read the books and you learnt the material, and came back to do my exams. I didn't get the grades that I needed to get into uni. So again, another time that the UK education system was super beautiful was when I came in 2013. And I said, listen, I don't have the grades you want in the A-levels, but I've got experience and I've got the passion. And I had a conversation and they said, okay, we've got something called a foundation degree. And you can do 2 years of that and then 3rd year at uni. They did a couple of tests and had a few interviews and they accepted me. So yeah, normal route of 3-year uni. but with a foundation degree and all sorts of other opportunities you've got to enter uni. So alhamdulillah, that was a huge, huge blessing in my life.
Blessings in disguise that we don't know about until they, you know.
Absolutely.
Amazing. What a journey.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Finished, and then you started looking for work.
Yeah. Finished. That was the time I started doing the talks with Google and attending. And at the same time, I decided to get into teaching. So right after my degree, I applied to do a PGCE in computer science. I got a scholarship from the British Computer Society to do that. So that was really exciting, you know, especially, right? So because you're sitting there looking for work and they're like, all right, we'll cover the costs for a year whilst you get your PGCE and become a teacher. So did that whilst doing the community work with Google and traveling. It was an exciting couple of years. And then went on to do a master's in computing education. So to really explore that came, the reason why that came was whilst I was teaching, I realized, okay, girls are not choosing computer science for GCSEs. The same theme is repeating itself. You know, a couple of years, last year I was in uni and there were no girls, women choosing computer science, and now we're in schools and girls are not choosing computer science. What's happening here? And so to find out what's happening here, instead of just doing a little bit of research, I'm like, oh, let's do a master. So I did a master's in computing education, and the focus of the studies was women into why are girls not choosing computer science as studies.
That must have been an eye-opening master's.
It was very interesting because we were comparing between countries, the UK and then other countries like Malaysia and Turkey. Because they had a lot of data. You know, why did I not choose Iraq? I would have had to do field. I had to do field work and didn't have time to do that in a couple of months. So the countries which did have the data, thankfully, closest to the region were Malaysia and Turkey. Really, really high rates of women choosing computer science as a degree.
That's interesting.
And they were actually outweighing the men choosing it.
Wow.
So there was like, okay, so these are cultures that are, we can say similar to Iraq, well, more similar to Iraq than.
Similar-ish.
Yeah. But then the studies found out that actually when it came to working, the numbers dropped again. So it wasn't a matter of education, it was just a matter of work. And I was like, oh, this is so similar to what I'm seeing in Iraq, because the women are going to choose computer science, they like it. But it's the work issue that's happening. So that's when I tried to really explore what was happening, and it really fit in well. Again, connecting the dots backward. At the time, I was like, what am I doing? Like, why do I keep jumping from one thing to another? I didn't have my ADHD diagnosed at the time, by the way, which we can come to. So I thought it was just me jumping at every interesting thing.
But every interesting thing has actually led to even more interesting things and more opportunities and opened up a completely new world for you.
That's so true. From someone who's so scared of networking and talking to people to being like, oh, actually, every one of them has opened doors.
I think that being afraid of networking or talking to people, I think that comes, if we look back at your time where you were bullied at school, that must come from that. You get triggered every time, you know. So
feels like a therapy session. I like it. Tell me more. No, I'm really interested, actually. I want to hear. So networking and bullying?
It's just talking to people, right? People that have been bullied, and in lots of cases people have been bullied, they shy away from interaction with other people.
Wow.
And so it takes them a while to get back into, you know, once they figure themselves out, what was triggering them, then they start opening up to people and start talking, networking, all of that. We do shy away if we've been bullied. And it's something about the interaction with other people.
So do people who are bullied generally introverts then?
Most cases, I don't know. If people I've seen, most cases, yes.
Okay.
They do like to stay away. They like to, you know, don't want to be seen.
I mean, I'll talk from my personal experience. When I was bullied, I mean, initially I knew I had a very big personality, but I was an introvert. Like yourself, I was afraid to network. Wow. I was afraid to be in front of people. I'd be the problem solver behind the scenes.
Yeah,
always behind the scenes, the operational guy that was just doing everything, clicking everything in together, but never in front of the camera.
Yeah. Please don't see me. Please don't acknowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, I related a lot to what you were saying with regards to the whole networking. And, you know, it's only later on in life where I decided, no, I need to start doing this. And I didn't have opportunities. I was always afraid because I think what you've just said, you just hit the nail on the head with regards to bullying.
Very interesting.
And we try to protect ourselves. So we have all these defenses, don't we, as human beings?
Okay.
And when we've been wounded as a child growing up, so we build all of these defenses, and these defenses are to protect ourselves, right? And so we stay away from people because people are the ones that have hurt us in the past. In our childhood, this is where the pain is from. I will be judged, I will be bullied, I will be talked about, the way I smile, people might say something. If I carry my bag in a certain way, people might say. And these are all things that lead back to our internal wounds that we haven't overcome. But your journey has been so interesting, how you've actually come to your own conclusions and have come out of your shell and started meeting people. And all the work that you're doing at the moment is completely amazing.
I could have done with some guidance. I should have found you earlier.
Well, I'm here.
That explains a lot. No, that's really cool, actually. Thank you for sharing that.
Mashallah, Yani, honestly, you've been through a very, very...
And you've just touched upon a subject. You just said without being diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
So that must have been a story in itself.
That was very eye-opening. That came at a time where it was, so let's go to 2019 now. I've got started a PhD. There's a lot of
I just
pressure.
want to go back just a little bit, just because I know before that you also had a child.
Yeah.
And you found out your...
Yeah, so that's...
Is this at the same time?
This is the same time.
Oh, this is all the same time. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll leave you to go ahead.
No,
because you have an autistic child.
Yes, I do.
When was he born?
So he was born in 2020. Official lockdown day in March. Yeah, 2019. I start my PhD, and there's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, a couple months later, I start a role with. I have my child in 2020. Not a couple months later, 9 months later. A few months after that, I start the role with Meta. So there's a lot happening at the same time. My son had a lot of health issues right from the start when he was born. And so I spent a few weeks in hospital, and there was I was still doing the PhD, and there was, the beginning of COVID and lockdown, and a child who's sick and in the NICU, and nobody's allowed to help you or support you. You have to keep going in by yourself. Nobody as in family. Obviously you have the wonderful NHS team who were doing their absolute best at the time. But when you want family, they're not allowed to be there, and they're not allowed to enter the hospital with you or be around. And so there was a lot of pressure then. And I had a conversation with a GP friend who started telling me about, have you heard of ADHD? Do you know? I was like, my executive function was all over the place, my memory, everything. I had that conversation. It was a conversation left it, didn't push for anything. And at the same time in the hospital, one of the, she was a psychologist. She came over and she said, can we have a chat? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm managing everything. And we spoke, and she said, have you heard of ADHD? And I was like, oh my God, why do these medics keep bringing up this term? And so I started doing some reading, at the same time I'm doing a PhD, so I'm aware of how to find research. So I was researching. I'm like, oh my God, all the signs, all the symptoms. So I decided to kind of start the route of diagnosis and finding that out. And it was an interesting journey, really interesting journey.
At the same time, you had just joined Meta, so congratulations on that at that point.
New baby, ADHD,
ADHD,
and
Meta all mixed together. Yeah,
I do want to talk a bit about Meta, because I want to find out how you got into that. But we'll talk about that in a little while. But you're in Meta. You found out you've got ADHD, and you're going through COVID, and your son's constantly in hospital.
Yeah, he had all sorts of health issues, so back and forth with the hospital.
Then you find out that he gets diagnosed.
That was a couple of years later. Yeah,
okay, so we'll get
he gets diagnosed at 2.
Okay, fine. We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
Then. So, how did you get into Meta?
That was literally based off networking.
Wow.
Networking. So it's a place I really wanted to work in before.
Okay.
I did apply many times to Google and to Meta, Facebook at the time, to big tech, because I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Guys, just for the viewers at home, take these tips because this is how you get into Meta. Just
Wow. Well, now it maybe don't know how you get most places in life. Really, just utilizing the resources that you have and pushing for advocating for yourself. Let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Self-promotion.
Yeah. In a realistic sense, because that phrase kind of just means different things to me. But yeah, really, I utilized my network, and what did that look like? It was me, instead of constantly just applying straight to the companies, going through the interview process and getting rejected, by the way, time and time again. I got used to, one of the ways I embrace fears is by going like super extreme. We can talk about that as well. And so I just kept getting rejected. I had a huge fear of rejection. I just kept getting rejected. I'm like, I'm going to get myself used to this. And it seems like it's the way most people go, by constantly applying. And then I was like, okay, let me have these conversations with my network. You know, the women I'm seeing in these tech events.
Google people.
There, Google and Meta. And they were getting into these companies. And I was like, why am I just feeling like I have to do this alone? Why do I not have these conversations and be like, hey, you know, you work in a cool place. You work in such a lovely place. It was very difficult for me to ask. Like, I just don't want to put myself. Fear? Rejection. But I think about the point of, in terms of culture, like background and culture.
Okay.
You know, it might be rude to ask, you know, what if they don't want to? What if they don't want to tell you how to get into their company? What if they don't want to share? What if they feel like, oh, so you're friends with me because I work in this place? All these thoughts. And it's like, but why can't we just brush them aside and say, actually, I've known these women for 4 or 5 years. We've spoken in different countries together. We've attended events together. They've seen what I'm like. They've seen that I'm more than happy to share my contacts and my network and my resources, whatever I can help with. So what's wrong with asking them? Say, hey, you know, I've applied to this company of yours several times and I keep getting rejected. Is there an opportunity, like I found this role to be really interesting. Is there an opportunity for you to connect me with the hiring manager, to have a conversation? And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe you can do that. I'm not pushing them to make sure I get the job. They can't do that.
No, of course not.
But maybe they can just put me in touch with someone and I will take the conversation from there. If I'm not a good match, well, I'm not a good match. But if there is a chance for me to get the job that I want, if it's a conversation away, then maybe give it a try. And so, yeah, I started having these conversations and say, listen, I'm getting rejected. I love the role. Do you think you can, you know, connect me with someone? And yeah, that's exactly what happened. But then obviously you still go through the whole interview process, which is like a 7-step. And you know, you get rejected for one role, but then they'll consider you for another. But you're in the and it takes a good few months. But it was, yeah, that's literally how I got in. Went through the interview process, advocated for myself, and alhamdulillah, found a good fit in the social impact team where a lot of good work was being done in the company.
That must have been a phenomenal time for you.
It was, because it was also like a big jump from doing little jobs and spending a lot of time in education to now being in a big tech company and working with such diverse backgrounds. And it's a huge company, you know. At the time, there was like 80-something thousand people that you're working with. Well, you know, in the company. 4 offices in London, and there's a lot. And then you're just suddenly exposed to all this free food and travel and all the cool stuff. And realizing, actually, you know, you're also doing a lot of hard work. It's not just the cool stuff. Doing a lot of hard work, and you're giving up a lot of your own personal time with your kids and with your family to really make sure that you're holding on to this job that you worked so hard to get. Yeah, so that's how, you know, your question was, how did I get in? That's how I got in. I'm a very real person. I'm not just like, oh yeah, well, they saw I was really cool and they just decided to pick me. Yeah.
But I'm sure they did see you as really cool.
Oh, I would pick love that way. Right? Oh, thank you.
But this is the whole point of networking, which I don't think it's promoted within our community, or within. I don't know if it's within Iraq or if it's just within the UK Iraqi community. Right. We're not great networkers initially. That's what I feel. I don't know if that's. I'm sure it's changed a lot.
It has.
It's changed a lot over the last 5 years, I'd say. There's a lot more networking events. There's a lot more things. But back in my days, we hardly ever met up. It was just, you'd meet up at the centre whenever there was an event on.
That's it. There were none of these professional networking events or getting to find out what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, we had to figure it out to sort of. Then we started creating networking events. We started doing all of these things. Yeah,
especially in tech. I didn't really know anyone in tech. All the amazing people I knew were in medicine and in education and lots, the main fields that we know of. And so they were doing a brilliant job, but I'm like, I faint when I see blood. Do I actually want to? That's my excuse for not having the brains for medicine. I faint when I see blood. Yeah, that's why I didn't become a doctor.
Who was your main inspiration, I think, to get into the tech world? Did you have somebody that inspired you or you idolized and you wanted to be like them? Or was it just purely something that you knew that was the right fit for you?
I think in terms of inspiration, my late father was was a huge advocate of doing what you enjoy and are good at. And he did inspire me in that way. Just so long as you're doing good, like that's what mattered. But it was never like let's put you in a box and you have to follow certain paths of education. What is it that you really enjoy doing and you're good at? You can do so much good with that. So that was inspiring, especially because, he, as a scholar, he was also at the same time studying, philosophy and theology and all sorts of studies and areas outside of his direct field. So I'm like, okay, well, that's an opportunity to explore something that's, I think providing a safe space to explore the areas which you enjoy. For example, my daughter, I used to take her to conferences with me. I really wanted her to get into tech. And then at one point she said, I want to be a dentist. And I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about that. But it was a quick moment of, okay, I want something for her. But what happened when my parents gave me an opportunity to explore what I enjoy? Maybe I can provide that for her. Now she's all into maths and wants to be a mathematician. So we'll find out by next year what's going to happen. But I think I was inspired by the fact that I was allowed to choose the path, and it wasn't looked down upon. I wasn't told, no, you can't get into that. But in terms of actually seeing anyone in tech, no. Yeah, I think that was your question, wasn't it? I just went quite far and came back. In terms of seeing anyone in tech, my brothers were working in tech, but didn't idolize them. They weren't a woman in tech. They have very different lives. That's it. Just being a man, you have the privileges. And so, that also gave me an opportunity to be like, okay, well, I have to kind of find my way in this space. And also bring other women with me and be like, hey, it's all really cool. We've got a space here.
That's brilliant. Well
So,
done to you.
Congratulations. Obviously, you've got so far. You're doing your PhD, you're in Meta, you found out you've got ADHD. So
all of them together.
All of them together, and everything seems to be going in the right direction at that point, roughly-ish.
Yeah.
Obviously, finding out your son's ill, going in and out of hospital, that was a difficult time.
Yeah, everyone has challenges, so let's focus on the
let's focus on the positives.
Yeah.
And then Meta starts going through redundancies.
Yeah, so 2 years in, so, working with charities and the social impact team, doing really, really good work, alhamdulillah. And what I loved about that part was I was able to get whatever resources we had to also share with the charities in our community as well. So they got to kind of take part in whatever I was capable of providing them outside of my direct remit. So that was really helpful. That was really nice. And then 2.5 years in, Meta decides, and most big tech, they decide that the AI revolution is happening and that's where they want to invest their money in. And so we're going to layoffs, as they call it in the US. We're going to lay off a big percentage of the company. So I think it was 11% of the company got laid off, about 13,000, something like that.
Wow.
I need to double check the numbers, but that's about roughly it. We're very lucky in the UK in terms of employment laws, by the way, because you need to be given a time and
Notice.
that's it. Or notice period. That's the word I was looking for. Whereas in the US, our team literally found out at 6 a.m. At 9 a.m. their computers are locked out and they can't have access. So it was quite brutal for them.
I've been made redundant from an American company.
Wow. So they treat you in the
American style.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so
That's it. You're locked out. From today, you have no job.
Well, literally, I walked into the office at 9 a.m. and I was told, you're going straight into a meeting. And I'm like, oh, okay. Everything okay. I left.
Yeah, because they're not telling you beforehand.
No, I left on Friday. Everything was fine. We had a director's meeting. I was privy to it because I was IT manager, and they were talking about what redundancies were coming around, and they turned around and told me point blank, your job is secure. And then on a Monday morning, I walk in, and I'm like straight into a meeting with the operational director, and I'm like, yeah, just to let you know, you're being made redundant, and we're going to ask you to go to your desk, pick up your personal things, and leave the building. Wow. And your exit
like that.
and your exit interviews in 2 hours. This is how we do it in America. Employment law, what they done is they played the game 1 day before I was there for a year. So I had no redundancy.
That must have been hurtful.
Oh, that was a kick in the teeth for me. But yeah, this is not my story. This is yours.
No, I mean, we're sharing stories here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That really resonates, yeah. And so our US counterparts literally had to live through that, and it was so traumatizing for them. Especially some of them in our team were actually there for 12 years, so they had built this social impact team. And so it was such a huge blow to them.
So you're hearing America, the whole team more or less is gone.
Yeah, but they're like, the UK team will let you know, so far you're safe. But what's that going to do to your morale? Just like, and that day I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. Everything, as we say, I could not enjoy a moment after that. After that, there was a lot of burnout. I had to take a bit of time off. A lot of time off now. Took a good few weeks because total burnout. And, they were great with dealing with that. But upon my return, and that's it. That's when I was like, I don't want to be in this place anymore. It was enjoyable. We were doing so much good and I'm here to do good. But if this is how I'm going to be left feeling like on edge and watching everyone feel so down and work crazy hours and, this is taking time away from my children. Do I really want to do this to them and to me? For what? There was then that question of identity and being connected to a big tech company. And if I'm not, everyone then knew me as like Hawra, who works at Meta, and Hawra, who built community with Google. And it's like, so if I'm not either of these, who am I and what am I? But I had to go through that thought process. And, upon my return, it was very clear that actually the London team and several teams around Europe were now getting cut with the second wave. And that's when moved on.
How did it make you feel?
I love that question because there's no straight answer for it. For many different things. One, it was like, okay, do you know what? I wanted to leave anyway. So whatever. Okay. I was planning to leave you. So thanks for making this easy. I get a redundancy package at least. But at the same time, it was like, oh, you could be so immersed in one place and give it your all, give it your energy and time and passion and identity and have so much connected to it. And it could literally just be taken away from you like that. Just because someone decided that's not an area they want to invest in. This is not a team they want to invest in. Wow. And you're like, oh, but I thought I was, we were doing good. so there was a lot of questioning of, was it me? Was what, but that kind of went away quite quick when you know that it's a whole team who's getting cut.
Yeah.
It helps. It helps when everyone else is getting thrown. But yeah, it was just like, okay, what to do now? So there was a lot of unpacking to do at the time. Am I okay with the mic? Yeah.
So you no longer identify with all of these big companies, and so you're sitting there thinking about the next step. How did the next step come? I mean, being made redundant, taking that identity from you because everybody knows you as Hawra, working for Meta and all of those amazing things. And now everything's quiet. What happens next?
Oh, I like that. What happens next? I realize that I've suppressed this passion for supporting women in tech in Iraq for so long, and I haven't been able to really do what I want for them and with them because I've been so immersed in this one company. During which time, by the way, to focus more on Meta, I left my PhD. Yeah, it was a choice that took some thinking to do, but there was a lot of pressure, at which point I was like, I can't deal with this. And that's when the burnout started. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to put the PhD aside, focus on building my career here, and then go back to that.
Okay.
Because, I was having...
was there any regrets? Once you made redundant, did you feel, I should have just...
Yeah, just stuck to the PhD. Somewhat.
Yeah.
Somewhat. It made me feel better knowing that I was doing good work at Meta. It's not like I was, there was direct impact. Everyone's doing good work. That's not to say, but it's not like I was, just coding away, for example. I was working directly with charities to make sure the product's working well, that they're able to make donations, supporting really good causes. So building those relationships with these organizations that are doing the work, the groundwork. And so looking back, I was like, okay, well, here's an opportunity to do the work in Iraq again. Sorry about the PhD. I was like, okay, well, we can park this aside, because it's two different things. It's we're looking at, that was my ADHD moment there. We're looking at cyberbullying, but it's so different to what I'm doing now. And I've got a young child who's just been diagnosed with autism, and so he needs my focus as well. And I realized, I'm spreading myself so thin. Did I regret it? Somewhat, but there's always that opportunity to go back.
Lessons learned.
Yeah. And so that's when I started exploring the work in Iraq again. And they reached out to me. I reached out to them. I was always in touch with the women who are doing the brilliant work there, just finding out what they're doing with their companies. And so that's when the story of the Code People started, where we started an academy teaching web development and tech for people in Iraq, starting in Najaf. So that's, a beautiful thing was born from that quiet moment, because it gave me an opportunity to be like, yes, I'm doing really, really good work here, but where's my passion really? Is it just about working with charities and big tech, or is there some things that there's a fire inside that I need to just explore and work with?
And so what we do, so we've spoke a lot about your journey in the tech world, and there is one question that we have to ask, and that's not from us, right?
Who's it from?
So what we do is we have this last guest ask the next guest the next question without them knowing who it is.
Okay.
So our last guest asked, what do you... remind me, never.
So it was something along those lines. Forgive us if it's not the correct way of saying it, but they did ask, what makes you an Iraqi?
Ooh, oh my God.
Because you just spoke about going back to Iraq, so it's the perfect time to ask this question.
What makes me? And we're not allowed to talk about dolma.
Oh,
My love for dolma. That would be my answer. What makes me an Iraqi?
Or do you identify as?
Yeah,
Iraqi?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I identify as Iraqi. What I said in the Taqat event in January. I identify as Iraqi British or British Iraqi, depending on who I'm asking the funding from for the courses. Yeah, I do identify as British Iraqi and somewhat Iranian Azeri as well. Have that in my blood. Let's take a moment here. Being part of a community who all want to rise together, I would say that. That's what makes me Iraqi, because when you go to Iraq, what are we known for? Hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when all the videos on social media that are coming out now, when they go to Iraqis are hospitable. They welcome you to their homes.
Yeah.
And so building community and watching everyone rise together with its challenges, you know, we're Iraqi, we have to have our arkat, is what makes me feel like I'm part of something so much bigger. You know, we grew up here, we're Iraqi, but what does that even mean? Yeah. The first time I see Iraq is when I'm 16. What does that even look like? So fast forward 20 years later, I think it definitely means being part of something so much bigger and trying to overcome the challenges, the difficulties, the trauma, the wars, which alhamdulillah we didn't, you know, I personally didn't live through. And then seeing the beauty that comes from that, manifesting in the tech community, I think that's been really, really beautiful and has helped me identify with my Iraqi roots.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Thank
really
you.
So
that was
lovely.
literally from the heart.
Yes, and it really, like, we
showed.
felt it.
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely, it showed. What would you ask our next guest?
Ooh. Oh, we're talking to Iraqi guests.
Could be anyone.
Could be anyone.
Middle Eastern.
What would I ask them?
Maybe a tech-related question?
Yeah. Or maybe a life one.
Go on.
Go on.
What's the biggest challenge that you've overcome that makes you proud of yourself today?
Oh, beautiful question.
That's really well said.
Thank you. I'm excited to hear the answer when it comes.
Can I ask you that same question?
Oh gosh, what was the question?
What's the biggest challenge you've overcome?
That's made me proud.
Well, let me reword it. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned that's made you proud of yourself?
Acceptance. Acceptance that you cannot change the direction of how things are meant to be when they are. When something is maktoob and decreed, accepting that you have limited control. I think that's my answer. Accepting that despite how much control you want to have, you still have very limited control. Doesn't mean don't push for as much as you can, but also accept that there is a point where you have to let go and, you know, accept what is there. So acceptance has been a big, big challenge for me because I've always been like, I can do this, like, it's only about putting more time, it's only about putting more effort, it's only about putting more energy into this and knowledge and all that. And it took a lot for me to actually reach a point where I'm like, okay, I've done everything I can, and now I accept. Be it a health issue, you know, watching your son go through a diagnosis, watching your father pass, all of these have taught me. So these are all challenges that have brought me to a point of learning acceptance, which I am proud of. I am proud of that.
I think I want to ask this one question. What legacy does Hawra want to leave?
That she did not rise alone. She took as many people up with her.
That's beautiful.
I think that's why I'd want to.
Lovely. And I think we're going to need to accept that we're coming to the end of our podcast. It's very challenging.
That went quick. It's been so fun.
Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your journey.
Thank you for having me. It's been such an
pleasure.
enjoyable conversation.
It's been a beautiful story.
Thank you.
It it's obviously real life. It's not just a story.
But life is stories,
but,
right?
but life are stories. And thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
You know, good luck with your own podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can't wait to
We
hear
started
more.
off with that. Let's finish with that.
I
as
managed
well.
to get a couple tips of like how to ask questions through you. That's been really helpful. Like a masterclass without you realizing it. So thank you.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you. Thanks.